Welcome back to Into the River. This is a bonus episode. I'm going to call it Out of the Land of Confusion. And what a perfect person to have on, my mama. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. This is my mom, Nancy. She's
Hello.
recently been in our Telegram world in the last few weeks, and it's been a mind-blowing experience, I think, for her to kind of see it up close and personal. It's one thing to hear about it. It's another thing to see what's going on. But I do want to get your take on that. But before, let's just start back. You have been on my podcast once before. It was a really good episode for anyone that wants to go back. It's called Matriarch, and it was in the early days.
Real
Been
early.
like a couple years ago, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And that was a really good one. But I'm glad that you're back in the midst of all of this craziness. I just kind of wanted to revisit some of the stuff with you because you've been such a pivotal part of this experience for me. So, do you remember when I first started listening to Tori?
I
Because I'm
do.
trying to remember.
I do remember. It started to, I don't remember the exact time because you were looking and seeking and searching. And your mind was kind of being blown and you were having some pretty huge paradigm shifts. So I think you were looking everywhere. Um, and uh, but I remember when you started listening to Tori because you were excited because you were able to start doing what you felt would be like feet on the ground, real change. You would be able to actually do some things. And she kind of had this philosophical sort of thing that she did where it intellectually drew you in. And I didn't have any qualms about it whatsoever. I mean, I knew it was a lot of time, but in the beginning, yeah, I do kind of remember. And you have a really brilliant, inquisitive mind, and I think you were intrigued to be part of a community with other people that were also very intelligent and really wanting to help what was happening in our country. So I remember it. Yeah, I remember when you started listening to her.
It definitely started off as like all the things you said just after listening to a lot of influencer types all of a sudden because I was new to the right side of politics. I was like a non-political type but super liberal heart, and as I started to see everything going on and understand what was going on with President Trump, I was like amazed once I started watching him. For like new listeners, I had no idea that he was not what I was being told. And I remember that was like a really cool experience for you and I and dad, because I would say dad's very political and he always has been. And in the past, he and I would have these ridiculous arguments where I was your typical liberal who never really looked into anything. And so when we would discuss things, I thought I was brilliant and I thought I understood exactly what was going on. And I was leading with my heart. And so I was the girl who was literally like yelling at him when I was losing an argument. And then he would just give up. And I thought that I had won the argument. But
Yeah.
when I started looking into President Trump and then looking into everything, I realized, wait a second, I don't know if I'm like a current modern day liberal. Like there's definitely some changes that are happening really quickly that I don't agree with. And I really liked President Trump. So like once I got to that point, it was really cool, specifically with dad and I, to start having that bonding experience over politics.
Yeah.
And you and I had a little bit of a rough go for a minute. Remember when the George Floyd stuff was going on and I was like leaning towards finding the truth, but I was still like really angry over that video. I think that everyone was, to be
Oh,
fair.
which one? I'm sorry, the what?
George Floyd.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, I do remember that. I do remember that.
Yeah.
Um, I really respected your perspective always, and I think your dad did too. Even though, you weren't really invested in looking into politics as a young person. And I mean, you'd already been through some pretty structured environments where there was lots of rules and rights and wrongs, and you rightly walked away from that. I mean, you were kind of ahead of your time. You were smart to get out of Dodge. And we weren't long behind you, but yeah, I do remember that. And I remember after voting for Trump, I didn't even tell anybody. Like I didn't tell anybody for like a year. I mean, people assumed, I think, because, you know, of certain things. And I'm not political. I just love our country. And your dad is more invested in the history of things. And you had such a good heart. You were the best of what liberal means, in my estimation. Very deeply compassionate, not ideologically either, but truly compassionate. You were never an ideologue. I never saw you in that fanatical sort of bent. You were never down with, you know, BLM trashing buildings and burning things down and the violence of Antifa, just as you wouldn't have been with, you know, the Ku Klux Klan. But yeah, I do remember that. I remember the whole thing about George Floyd and what a conflict that was.
It was hard,
You and I have
yeah.
had some real rumbles.
To say the least, yes. You and I, um, yeah, we've been the type, we have a very passionate woman environment in our family. So we're all very tough, very strong, and we can have knockdown, drag out screaming matches and then hang up on each other. But it's pretty much always 5 minutes later, one of us is calling like, hey, I love you. Okay. It's all good. And so I love that about us. But
Well,
no,
one of the reasons is because we trust each other. I mean, I know that I can be myself and I don't have to worry about the fact that I'm going to lose your love or your affection or your respect. And you
yeah.
know the same. So
Exactly. And it's nice to have a safe space to be able to just argue about that stuff, even though we haven't had I don't even remember our last argument at this point.
I don't either. No, I don't either. I don't
um,
remember.
but I remember there was kind of a pivotal point with the George Floyd situation, and I can't remember the specifics, and we don't have to go into them, but there was a part where I was seeing it with my bleeding heart. I think it was around the time I don't remember the specifics. I don't want to mess it up, but you were pointing out another element of it that had a lot more truth of what was really being pushed as far as the narrative and all of that. And I was really struggling with that because I was like, after seeing that video, it was so hard to watch that. And I think everyone can agree any situation like that, at first glance, you're just like, this is disgusting. This is heartbreaking. So that's all I was driven by. I even wanted to go protest. I told Nico, like, I want to go stand with the people. And I didn't know that BLM was corrupt yet. Like, I found out later that it was a lot of being pushed on people for other reasons. But at the time, I was like, we got to stand in the streets. This can't happen. So I was susceptible. And you and I had a discussion. And because you were more knowledgeable and I was just driven by pure emotion, we got in a pretty bad fight. And I've shared this on the podcast before, but not for new listeners. And then dad called me after you and I fought, and it was one that I couldn't win. And I didn't understand why you were so passionate about what you were saying. And then dad even texted me, like, you're not going to treat us this way. And he kind of has enough. And everyone knows that dad never puts down his foot with me. Is like, he's not the type to get like too argumentative,
Yeah.
and he's usually let us do our thing, but he rarely intervenes. And when that happened, it hit me in a way that I was like, wait, they're very serious about this. And I remember I started to discover more and look more into things and wake up to that reality. And then I looked into the BLM funding and what was going on with that, and I was just like, oh, there's a full circle. So man, 2020 was such a paradigm shift, but I think it was our last political argument.
I think so too, because you really did start doing research. And you also have always known your dad and I to be very passionate about the things we believe, but we're more interested in knowing truth than we are in being right. And you know that about us. And it's always been the case. Like and I still feel that way. I don't want to be right at the expense of the truth. I never have wanted to be the lazy.
Yeah. Come here, baby. Say hi.
Hi, three-legged dog.
What are you doing? I usually have the door closed, but Nico's out for the day, so I left it open in case Blazy was like, "Where's Mama? What's she doing?" Okay, hold on.
Yeah, it was really interesting to watch you go from a place of because you were kind of the defender of the downtrodden. It's one of the things that um, your dad and I both were as children and even as adults. We're just geared towards taking the side of the underdog, and you're no exception to that. And your deep capacity for love always prevailed for us and for others. But your love of truth is very strong. And I think you heard enough things, and I think we pushed back enough with you because you needed to know that you're being lied to and being stirred up emotionally. And as terrible as all of that was, there was much more to the story. And you, to your credit, I mean, decided, wow, I need to start looking into this for myself. And you did. You actually really did. And you far exceeded the amount of research I've done, especially when you got into watching Tori 3 hours a day and getting involved in learning and expanding your knowledge base about things. But even before then, you started really looking and you were like, wait a minute. And you started paying attention. And you didn't leave your heart aside. You brought your heart with you. You brought that liberal heart of love with you. But you also engaged your brain and your critical thinking in a new way. And it was a beautiful thing. It didn't take long to see you begin to be able to read between the lines and connect dots. And you did it brilliantly.
Oh, it was crazy. Like once you seek it, you will find. And I think a lot of people share that experience in 2020 of just kind of like seeing how deep it really goes. And I will say, like, most of the research I started doing was on my own. I think there was a pivotal point
It
where like
was.
finding Tori was exciting because she tickled my brain in a way that most people didn't. Like I saw a lot of them as like kind of a, I don't know, they weren't giving me anything new. There was a lot of future predictions. Tori was going into subject matter that I was really excited about. And I would see Tori as someone as like, if 2020 didn't happen and life was just happening and I found her and she was doing this, I would still find her stimulating. Just like I like to listen to Joe
Yeah.
Rogan's podcast or Jordan Peterson or whoever. I'd be like, oh, she's like a variety show of knowledge. Like this is awesome. And I think there's value to that. But
Yeah, she
there
got into the esoteric and she got into some things, quantum physics. You've always been a mathematician. You've always loved math and you've always and that appealed to you, looking expanding your awareness and growing in the way that you view the world. And she brought some of that stuff that really
she did.
excited you.
There was some
Yeah,
really fun stuff that just triggered my senses. But I will say that the digging and stuff was very organic before I found her. Like I
it
just
was.
was it was more of a matter of I started to see the liars on TV and I started to catch them in lies. And then I was just kind of like, wait, let me look for myself. And I was just trying to figure out like everyone else was. And that was actually a better experience. I feel like I got more done before I found Tori because I was just
Mhm.
on my own figuring it out. And I was kind of like, I have to do something. And I was following my heart. And I used to do tutorial videos and try to help people. Everyone knows this. But like, I think so many of us were doing that. And it was beautiful because all the people were finding each other because our
Right.
accounts were being shared. I went up like 1,000 followers in a few months before they put the shadow ban on me. And like everyone was growing and like helping each other and trying to do it through humor, through education, through and like that actually pre-Tori was really, really beautiful.
Yeah.
I can kind of look back and notice like finding Tori where I started to more look towards her and less towards trusting myself, which I do think is by design. But I noticed that I was sitting around more dependent on when's Tori going to be on. It became more of like she's going to help, she's going to give me answers, and you know, it was quite a few months before she even mentioned doing anything with the pen. But when she did introduce that, that's what, like you said, really solidified that she's different from all these influencers because
Yeah.
she's calling for legal action because I've always been like against violence and all of that. So that was another thing that like drew me in. But obviously in hindsight, I don't think we actually did anything really of value. Not to say that people didn't, but you know what I'm saying. So anyway,
Yeah.
like I just want to point that out. As I'm going through this experience, I was just listening and loving her, and there wasn't really anything negative until I became a part of the Telegram community. So I don't know. At what point do you remember me starting to share? Because I'm so curious for an outsider's perspective. Like, when did you see a shift, or when did my stories stop being about the things I was learning and start being about this toxic environment I was in?
Well, it was definitely the last year or so. I would say that, you started telling me about, you were upset because this is you know, all someone has to do is use a few words, because when everything got turned upside down and the whole world began to see, all of these pundits and all of these influencers just came out of the woodwork, like, and sadly most of them have not stood the test of time in terms of their integrity, the level of transparency. um, they couldn't keep the facade up long enough. And and so we make a lot of assumptions no matter what situation we find ourselves drawn to. It's human nature, we'll make assumptions about that situation. And some of the assumptions I think you made, as I would have, is that this is a free speech community, that this is a transparent community where voices get to be heard, and where new ideas are fresh and brought in, and where hierarchical systems are no longer in place. Because if you mentioned before, you were part of, because of your dad and I, you were kind of born into a cult. And not kind of, you actually were. I mean, you had a religious experience at age 4, and you had all of these things happen, and a lot of it was just programmed information that we didn't really realize at the time. But around the time you started getting really upset was when the things that you thought should embody this community: freedom of speech, freedom to share ideas, the ability to debate in an intelligent way, um, presenting ideas and stuff. And I started seeing some ripples and some trouble with you when people started being banned, and not only being banned for minor infractions, but that it was more and more difficult for people to honestly share transparently new thoughts or ideas, or even to ask questions. And then there became this really, like, stone cold grip on who could be in a room and who couldn't be in a room. And it was really disturbing to you. You were like, why are we not, you know, one of the things that we hold most dear in this time of incredible censorship is this freedom, this idea of the freedom of speech, and this idea of sharing ideas, even ideas that you may or may not like. And the grip of control started to become a real issue, and it had all of the earmarkings of a cult. I don't think you put that together in the very beginning, but you started being really disturbed by the fact that, and then you said that you kind of got lulled into a place of being drawn into doing some of the very things that you didn't want to do and you didn't want to see happen in this community. And there was targeting of people that really upset you. You began to see, when you started seeing people getting targeted and things being said, like without receipts and without things, and then the whole deal with the money and the billboards and the mystery and all of the hidden things about that, the lack of transparency, quite frankly. That's when I remember you starting getting upset, when free speech started being hindered, when control started to be a real issue with the admins. And then it just evolved from there to the point where people are saying heinous things, not only to you, but to other people, like very real threats and goofy stuff. And so I remember you being very concerned about that, but you were trying so hard to keep an open mind. You
Yeah.
really were.
I was, because for the longest time I thought that we were all allowed to see this and experience this so that we would grow stronger in our discernment. And I remember Tori would just say little things here and there to kind of like give you that impression, like, oh, just let them do what they're doing, don't get in their way when they're pulling their pants down. So you got this idea of like, she's spotlighting these people, she's making them feel safe. These are the things that my friends and I would talk about on the phone, like we're trying to interpret the situation in her favor, or and not just in
Mhm.
her favor, we're actually doing what people do, what I've done my whole life, what you've done your whole life, which is no matter what situation you're in, you try to grow through it. You try to
Right.
learn from it. So there was real
Yeah.
growth that was happening in that time on a level of like overcoming obstacles and all of this. But when I started to see that, like, okay, so let's go back to when I came home this last time, and you can be as honest as you want because you saw me different than the last time you saw me. And this was the for the wedding. And this was when Tori happened to come into California and give this amazing, as I thought at the time, message. It was total bullshit, but I didn't know that. And it gave me this huge sense of hope that was completely false and just setting me up for future failure and everyone else. But when I came home, you experienced all of that with me. All of that drama was happening, and it was really hard because I
Right.
was trying to keep it from keeping me present, but I was also drawn back into it. So, what was it like seeing me that time? Like, what was your assessment of me as far as how I was doing?
Uh, it wasn't great. Um, you have you've always been a very focused, dedicated, hardworking person, um, an incredibly creative person. And your dad and I have always marveled at the level of whimsy and beauty that you find in life. You know, you spontaneously dance. You make your home absolutely beautiful. You express yourself creatively. You moved a lot. You took care of yourself. And when I saw you, I was very concerned because you had literal like inflammation in your body that was visible. There was you didn't look healthy. You were preoccupied. You were anxious. And um and it was a manifestation of all of this time spent. I call it the fruit from the tree. And I'm like, that's not a good tree because this fruit sucks. Because I saw my beautiful, active, participating in her life daughter. Suddenly, everything was around Tori Says. Everything was about this, um, this movement and this cult. And and it was the only thing in your life that I could see that had really changed. I mean, other than your expanding awareness that is constantly changing because you're constantly growing as a person. But the fruit of the time spent in this group was taking a toll on you in an obvious physical way, in an emotional way, even. And I was really worried about you. And I even spoke to you about it before you went home. And I asked you to consider how you were spending your time because anything that you're supposed to be in should be accompanied with passion, life, and peace.
Yeah.
That should be the good fruit from a healthy tree. And this wasn't good. And even at that, I didn't realize fully that it was as bad as it was. I had no idea. But you were literally like bearing the weight of your country. Like I know that sounds crazy to people maybe, but after sitting in Misfits and in the other chat room, you're not the only one. I mean, the stories about this all-consuming thing, um, and how it began to affect people and how they began to even neglect some things in their own life, you know. And but for you, it was a stark because I hadn't seen you in a few months. So it was a stark, radical. like, holy shit.
Well, and I appreciate you because you're the one person in my life who will tell me the truth in those moments, and I know you love me, but you'll be you'll let me know when you're worried, when there's something that's off balance. And when you told it to me, all I could do was say thank you, because I needed someone to tell me what I felt to be true, but I was ignoring. And so, I mean, I remember I was getting these things on my skin. When I'm really stressed, I get like boil style acne, and I remember my back, and it was the wedding, and I was officiating the wedding, so that was horrible because I had like this horrible like cystic,
Cystic.
yeah,
Yeah.
acne on my body. I had I just felt not good and not myself. But you saying it, I needed to hear. It's like a little wake up call, because we can be in our own denial when we look in the mirror and like when we really
Yeah.
assess ourselves. But so that time so I'd been struggling forever. I had left admin a while back, and then I'm like, this is so heartbreaking that our room is struggling so much. Like, why does it have to be so difficult for us to just develop community and enjoy each other like we are now? And
Yeah.
I remember that call happened, and I listened to it with you, and
On
it
the front porch.
yeah, I was like, you have to hear this call from Tori. I've listened to that call probably 15 times, because it was like, it made all the suffering worth it. I was like, you know what? She really does care. She just wanted us to learn this lesson, whatever. And so she said all these things, and it gave me a renewed sense of hope, which is really hard, because looking back in hindsight, I see it now as an abusive cycle, to where when
Mhm.
people are over the bullshit, she'll offer this beautiful thing to draw you back in, because she does need our attention to be relevant. And without us, she's pointless. So I do see the abusive cycle. But after that, I came back, and I was so excited that I, agreed to admin again. I was elected in, and then everyone knows the story. But oh, where was I going with that? There was something I wanted to say. Oh, right before I did that, you um I had a dream that I wanted to share. And my dreams have been ramping up. Dad has a lot of really incredible dreams, and you have had a lot of them as of late, that are kind of showing us things about life. And I had this dream of Tori, and right before I accepted it, as being she was like drunk, and she's stumbling around, and I'm holding a baby, like in one of those wrap things. And you were over standing by the door, just patiently waiting for me to come and to leave the room. And you weren't pressuring me or whatever, but you were giving the look like, it's time to go, it's time to go. And I'm holding this baby. I'm like, no, I have to take care of it, because Tori was drunk and belligerent, and there's all these people around her, and she was causing harm. She was yelling, she was pushing people. And I was like worried about her and the way she looked. I wasn't worried about anyone around her. I was just like, wait, mom, I have to take care of Tori. I have to make sure that she doesn't cause any harm, that she looks bad later. And then you're telling me, Ashley, we should probably go. And finally I go to leave. And once I got out, I look at the baby, and the baby was almost dead. And I realized I had been neglecting this baby, and it hadn't been fed, because I was, taking care of Tori. And when I had the second half of the dream was even darker. It was like the dream had two parts, and so you're in the first part. The second half, um, I was in a situation that had to do with trafficking and sexual abuse, and I was trying to blow the whistle. I was trying to tell people what was going on, but I'm being led, and these people are playing a game with me. They're pretending to be my friends, and then they're trying to harm me, and they basically get me into this room where they're going to do something really bad to me. And in the moment right before it happens, a woman appears to me, and she was actually a Black woman. And in the dream, I was Black and she was my mother, but she had been passed. And I was in this lineage of like people who had experienced this abuse. And she looked at me and she goes, you're going to go through this. She goes, and you're going to suffer, but give them hell. And that was the dream. And so this dream was one of the most powerful dreams I've ever had. And at the time, I refused to interpret it the way I knew it was. I shoved all that down, because seeing Tori drunk and mean and belligerent was something I wasn't ready to handle, that interpretation. So I was like associating all that with her world, but not with her, because I was in denial and I love this woman. So you're the one in that dream. There's this mother figure, and you're that person in that dream. Well, then as it goes on, one thing that I've noticed is you've always been the person to kind of give me a little bit of insight. You've seen things a little bit ahead of me, so I'll get into that in a minute. But throughout my experience of being admin, the crazy thing is I kept, when I would get too emotionally involved and it was starting to affect my mental health, I would have a dream about a baby. And the baby's state would let me know how much I needed to pull back or not. And I had the baby almost die again. There was one time when I was seeing a lot going on, but I was keeping myself very protected and I wasn't allowing myself to let it rule my life. And then I had a dream that the baby's sleeping and I kept checking in and it was fine and it was happy. So it's just kind of weird. I wanted to share that dream that like it all kicked off me going into that with this idea of I knew I need to be cautious. I knew that the baby dreams were letting me know, was I losing the baby for this cause? What the most important thing was that suffering because of my obsession or my time spent with this community. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Well, I feel like you were not taking care of my baby, which is you. And the baby, the baby was neglected. The child was neglected. The child was lost. I mean, I can't interpret the dream, but all I think about when you say that is you trusted your inner child to someone who was not worthy. No one is but you. No one. And, you know, we've been through a lot in our life together, and you've always pushed boundaries. It's one of the things that has caused me the most consternation, but also has caused me the most absolute respect for you, because I'm like, oh man, the ocean scares me. You're like, come on, mom, let's go. And next thing you know, I'm out in the ocean with you up to my neck in water, and the waves come in and we can't touch the ground anymore. And you are laughing. Your head is thrown back and you're laughing. And I'm afraid of heights. Come on, mom, let's go to a 5,000-foot mesa and lay down on our backs and lay our heads backwards over so that we can look at the canyon upside down. And I was shaking on the inside. There's that part of you that I didn't get, that adventuresome, you know, part of you, and that pushes against fears and faces fears. And it's really, honestly, we learn so much from our children, and I've learned so much from you in that regard. You don't do anything half-assed. You jump in headlong with all of your heart and you give it all of your heart. But I think now there's a new understanding about the fact that nobody, no more gurus, no more, you don't need it. You have literally everything you need. I mean, teachers come into our lives, but they don't announce that they're teachers. We just learn from them because teachers teach. And, you know, people who speak truth, people who heal, heal. Physicians heal people. And they don't have to even announce it. This is what, you know, people are just being what they are. And I have so much respect and regard for your journey because I've been privileged to watch it from the very beginning. And so I've long since dispensed with any kind of fear about you. About, as a mom, I can't separate that mom thing that wants to protect you and that wants to check on you and make sure everything's well. And I do, and that'll never go away. And I don't apologize for it either. It's an honor to be the one who gets to worry from time to time. But in all reality, I've seen your love of the truth overcome your need to be right. You're not about needing to be right. You want to know truth. And so, you know, having this privileged position in your life and having the honor of being able to say to you, and, you know, to your credit, you're the one who allows it. I mean, if you set boundaries and said, you know, I don't want to hear that, I would respect your boundaries. I would. But you're open. And so in the process of watching you go through all of this and watch you start to see, for me, I didn't really know Tori was what Tori was. And I would dip in because I tried listening to the quantum thing. And I don't have a mind that works like yours in that regard. And so it didn't really, I was never captured by Tori. I was never captured by what she was doing. And not because I thought she was bad or anything like that. It wasn't a thing. But one day, this is just before you're like, I think I'm out. I was listening to Tori and she was talking about voting. And well, first of all, I had seen some of her footage of her running for office in Ohio. And to be honest, I was like, this is the person that my daughter's enamored with. And I don't mean to be mocking, but it was a shit show. There was nothing impressive about it in any way, shape, or form. There was no professionalism. There was nothing was compelling. Nothing was compelling about her appearance, the way she came off, what she was saying, and the way that she was so ill prepared for the meetings and stuff. I was just like, wow, this just doesn't seem right. But having been in cults myself and having check my brain at the door, grab my baba, put on my diaper, sit in the chair, and listen to the guy tell me what God has to say about everything. I understand it. We're all prone to, and we've been programmed deeply from the beginning of our lives to kind of need and want someone to guide us because we're taught not to trust ourselves. So I'm listening to Tori. I just check in. I'm listening to one of her talks on Telegram, and I'm like, no, it was on YouTube. It was a little bit she did on YouTube. And she was talking about how January 6th, you all went, and it was basically, she was mocking people. And I knew that she had encouraged people to be a part of that. And then she was saying, well, you know what it was? It was a data collection thing. And now they know your name or something like that. And I literally threw my phone across the room because I thought, bitch, I thought this is disgusting. I mean, I saw it as clear as day. I thought this is double speak. This is speaking out of both sides of your mouth. And it enraged me. It enraged me because it's abusive. For one thing, it's absolutely abusive. And I was like, I'm done. I will never listen to this woman. I have actually, I've been falling away from the influencers for quite some time. I mean, like the whole deal with Candace Owens and Cole Arbor and Steven Crowder, and the way these people turn on each other like jackals, and Candace has become a celebrity gossip channel. And it's just absolutely a joke and disgusting. And I'm looking at it all, and Officer Tatum can't sell enough t-shirts. And I'm just like, and the thing is, I don't mock people trying to make a living and making money if they're investing their lives in a movement that supports people who are for freedom and helps direct some of that energy in ways that actually can make change and create change. But the minute you start mocking the people that are actually showing up, this for you was a 3-year full-time job. You didn't get paid. You didn't get paid, and you paid the price in your body through neglecting yourself and your health. And it was all well intended, but the fruit of it stunk. And just that one moment, that one brief thing, seeing her run that campaign in Ohio, which was absolutely pathetic, and then seeing her mock people when prior she was saying, wow, this is a great thing. Everybody should, stand up and do this. And I was just like, ugh, no thanks. And then you invite me to Telegram, and I am sitting in there and I'm seeing this very tactics that you had told me about prior. I'm seeing people do like psychological warfare.
Yeah, what was your take on that whole Emmy situation?
That was just, well, for one thing, I hate to say this, but it's because of where we've been and where we are now, but it was so obvious that this was a job, that this was a planned thing, because the veneer of kindness and love of truth and freedom was so thin that it took nothing to crash through it. And the next thing you know, you've got like a rabid dog at the end of a leash, fangs out the whole 9 yards. And it was just mind blowing to watch. And I felt so bad for all the people that had been through all of this and started to come together and the liberal left has ruined the word safe place. They really have. They've ruined it because why. Everybody knows why. They've ruined it. But the truth is, this place was set aside to be a refuge for people who had their lives literally hijacked when all they wanted to do was be a part of a movement to take our country back. And not only that, they were mocked and called stupid, and they were abused. They were called terrorists. They were called all these horrific names after investing hours and hours of their time and their life in this thing, which was supposed to afford them an opportunity to actually educate themselves on how to change things from the ground up. And when they actually started doing it and people actually started sharing information, in would come these bizarre people, and they would come in and they would just start, like, it was so obvious. I mean, it was so obvious, and it was so hard not to respond to it. I can't imagine being, I mean, it was so hard. I'm sitting here and she's definitely going after very specific people. It was very targeted against you and against Brad. I mean, it was so completely obvious, and I'm your mom. And I'm in there, and she knows I'm your mom. I don't know how she knew I was your mom, but she knew. I mean, I'm not part of the Tory community. I never have been. And so me being in there, I'm really quiet because I haven't walked through the shoes of all the people that showed up there for a place of refuge. And to see your, not only that, but even Matt and some other people mocking the whole purpose of why this room was here to begin with. And it was to kind of detox, come back down, find your feet, an invitation back to your life where you're attending to your own health and your own joy and living again. And yet, but I do think when you play games like what Tori plays and what that community had been turned into, you're paranoid. They're paranoid. And so they've got to try to keep an eye on things. Because the thing about, I think it's human nature, but I think when people are divisive, lacking transparency, and they're running an operation behind the scenes, and everybody does it on some level, but when they're doing that, they assume that everybody is like them. They think that everybody else, the paranoia has got to be incredible. Yeah. But the nastiness, I'm like, are you actually a patriot? Or how do you have a love of country, but you tell somebody that you're going to fuck them 8 ways but Sunday? Like, really? You're a patriot? Well, no, thanks. I don't want you fighting for me. I don't want you fighting on my behalf. You call women who are working their butts off stupid housewives? Really?
Yeah.
You're not a patriot. You're not a lover of truth, and you're not a lover of country.
I wonder.
Hold their own pants down.
They're essentially doing what they're always accusing others of doing. And you hit it on the head when you said, it's almost like takes one to know one kind of a thing. It's like when you are doing this thing, you think everyone else is doing the thing. And so you accuse them of your plan all the time. And I caught on to that a while ago. You're absolutely right. But I found this post from, I think it was right around that time when Emmy was in there being crazy, or this was from a different time. I don't know. But it's from Tori in her chat. I was like, let me see if she said anything. Sometimes I'll go check my name, which I'm sure it could get worse now that they know I do this. You haven't caught my secret account, guys. Like, it's so weird. I thought that she was so good at the internet and all the shit that she does. She doesn't even know my second account. It's hilarious. Anyway, I found something that she was saying about us, and it was like this one chick was like, is this the one that's run by that Brad guy or whatever? And Tori responded in her main chat, Observe to see how evil consumes and watch operators flock to collect them and make them darker and more evil than they are. Pray for them. I showcased it so that you can see what happens when people are consumed by their ego. Observe the negative forces and how they act, the random accounts that promote it with lies. This is how demons enter, cracks in your soul. Praise God and pray that you have no footing for evil to take hold. Watch how it transforms people. It destroys their soul. Pray for them. What are your thoughts on that? She's describing all of us who have been through her garbage, and we're demons, and she's describing operators will flock to make them darker. That's what Emmy did. But what are your thoughts on this kind of bullshit?
I think it's dark forecasting. I think she's talking about her own intentions personally. I think she's hoping that that's will happen. Just like if you say money, 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 and the money starts rolling in, it's the same thing. It's the same thing as spell casting, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And I think she's pretty well versed in that kind of thing. But she's attributing, she should be very careful because she's attributing dark to what is light. And she's basically reading out of her own playbook when she says things like that. And she's trying to create and stir up energy, dark energy, to that end when she says pray for them, because she basically said you were all evil and demonic. And that's basically what she's saying there. And what a bizarre, it's so bizarre that she would say something like that and that people would be okay with her saying something like that. Like, they're like, wait a minute. I mean, if it were me and I was in the California group and I have had a chance to observe you for like 3 years, watching you in and out of that whole situation. I mean, I know that you said that, there were times you participated in things that you weren't proud of and you didn't like it. And the minute you saw it, you corrected and you said, I'm not doing that anymore. That's gross. That's not me. And that's part of the lure of group think. And it's meant to sort of groom you to be that kind of operative, basically, in that situation. But once you saw it, you were like, no, I'm not doing that anymore. I can't be a part of that. And I know you went to people and said, hey, please forgive me. That wasn't cool or whatever, right? You made it right. But it's so bizarre to have that kind of language towards people who have spent so much time invested in listening to her talk and taking to heart the things that she shared and tried to teach. Like, it's despicable. It's absolutely despicable, and it's dangerous. And I just continue to believe that the people in there are going to get good at looking at the fruit. You know the tree by the fruit.
Yeah.
And it's rotten. It's rotten to its core. And she's not the only one. I mean, she's part of a large group of people, like you said before, that found a bunch of Americans waking up vulnerable, concerned, and needing some guidance and some direction on how we turn this shit around.
Yeah.
And they preyed upon people, good people, who had a heart and intention to make a difference. And not only that, they paid for it actually literally with their own money. You gave money to several things and several grifters. But more importantly, you gave your precious time, talent, and heart to this. And for her to speak so despicably of a whole group of people, then hide behind a paywall and then mock the people that are really that don't have Grubhub coming in by the hundreds because they don't have followers and they're literally having a hard time paying their electric bill. Like, there's no compassion for that. Again, it's a bad tree and that's shitty fruit. And so I just pray their eyes are open.
Yeah, I do too. And it's something that I've gotten really used to, so I don't internalize the shit anymore. But Yeah, I like to hear an outsider perspective because so many of us have been conditioned. And I love that you said groom because it is 100% grooming. These people don't even
Yes.
bat. The fact that I have friends who see that go on and her discuss like me that way, who are still like looking for her attention right now. It's like I try to remember not to be too angry at my friends because they've been groomed. They can look and see her do these things and still make excuses for it and still leave friends in their lives. And like, although I'm angry and like trust is lost, I also know cults do that, groomers do that. And so I'm trying to like, it is hard, but it's like I always say the frog in the boiling water. It gets turned up over time, and it's just like an abusive situation. Once you're in too deep, it's like if you would have take if we would have seen Tori now, that's just shitty to everyone all the time, calling people losers from day one. She
Yeah.
probably wouldn't have a following. You know what I
No,
mean? It's like
no.
so. And then I did want to ask you because you got to witness as an outsider perspective, like Brad and who he is in the chat and see him on the podcast. So what is your view? I mean, we all saw this insane attempt to get him just to fall apart. That's what they do. They nag you and push you until you fall apart. And they're like, look how crazy this person is. And I think that
Yeah.
that's always been the goal. But what's your take on Brad?
I think Brad is an incredibly gifted writer. Like
Mm-hmm.
that guy, I would buy his book. So
Mm-hmm.
Brad, when the book comes out, I want a signed copy. I think he has a heart of gold.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's not used to, I don't diminish him in his life experience. I think it's so incredibly valuable. And one of the things I hated in that attack was the ageism. Emmy and some of them, really referring to old people. The ageism was really disgusting and
Yeah.
gross because, I went to a church one time where the average age of the people there was like 35. We were missing out on so much wisdom by older people, but Brad has life experience and passion, deep, deep intelligence and patience. Like he really did want it to be a free space. He didn't want to censor anyone. And so he put up with so much abuse. But I think the thing that I can't know for sure because I haven't spoken to Brad, but I think the thing that turned it around for him is he was watching that community that came to his channel be abused again. And I mean, the stories he tells about what happened to him, was it in Florida chat
Mm-hmm.
or Florida room? Dang, like these people are wicked in their assault. But I just see Brad as a man who really does love our country, who loves people. He's creative, he's funny, he's truly a gifted writer, and I wish him all the success in the world. I really like him, and I know he's representative of a lot of people just like him who were caught in this net. He's
Yeah.
not the only one.
Absolutely. No, that's the thing we have in common is we've all had some kind of experience. And it's interesting because we have that room is so crazy because you have all of these people watching. Like Tori's probably watching that shit so close right now because I found out recently that she actually deletes messages from people and there's evidence that she's been the ones deleting and then blaming it on her own admins. And I'm talking about in California and like
Wow.
people's staterooms. So I just realized Tori's way more involved with this shit. Like it's so funny. The more I learn about her, the more she goes from this pedestal to this like tiny, like terrified coward. And I'm like, no wonder you're losing your shit right now because like she's like the mouse and we were all looking at the shadow on the wall, thinking she's this thing. No, she's the mouse who's obsessively looking at all the staterooms, all about her shit, messing with everything behind the scenes because she's desperate and she's gross. And I love that it's
Well, one of
coming
the things
out.
that I did feel, to be really honest about Emmy in particular, I even told you, my heart breaks for her.
Yeah.
She just gave 13 hours of her life in defense of the indefensible. She'll
Mhm.
never get that 13 hours back. She
Yeah.
won't. She won't get them back. But if she's smart, she'll take a step back and take a 30,000-foot view and really look at the preponderance of the evidence, which there is a lot.
Well,
There's a
I
lot.
don't try to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, but I don't see substance there. I think that
Oh,
if you're not
there
willing to
was a
take a step back, I didn't feel anything genuine. And I tried really hard to look for it. I saw the appearance of genuine that would flip on a dime. She would treat me with respect until I questioned her, and then I'm a terrorist. It's like, if you thought I was a terrorist 5 minutes ago, why were you talking to me all sweet? Because you're
oh
changing
yeah,
your tactics to see where I'm going to fall. So am I going to help you to all turn on Brad right now? And I
right.
watched that and I'm like, you seem like a very skilled individual. And a lot of these people do. The dumber ones like PsyOps and IO, they get themselves messed up. And you probably don't know these people, you haven't seen them engage. But whenever they engage, they actually make Tori and themselves look worse. But there's ones like Emmy who I watch that are a little more skilled. But when you talk to them on the phone, like we talked on that voice chat, I was like, there's no heart, emotion, humanity here whatsoever.
Yeah, that's why I felt bad because there really was an absence of
Oh,
life.
I feel like it's a job. I don't know. How do you feel
It was
bad for
gross.
someone that like, I get what you're saying. I do. I
Yeah,
was
I
just
was just
kind of
like,
like,
man, this is really this is a sad way to live your life. You're lucky you get to leave. You're like, oh, I'm awake now and I'm leaving. But I can't imagine. I don't know. I just can't imagine sitting in a house by yourself, terrorizing people in that way for
claiming
so
to have a
many.
family, and if she does, that's fine. But I'm all I'm thinking is like, who's cooking for your kid? What's going on? I'm not saying that moms can't spend 13 hours on the internet if they want, but I'm just kind of
Right.
like, it's interesting. Anyway,
Yeah.
you're gonna get really dragged through the mud for bringing up the fact that this person has a child, which they constantly throw out in everyone's face. But yeah, I believe it's her that claims that. But anyway, it's hard to watch. I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, and I'm so glad that Brad finally agreed. Like, we need boundaries. I'm like, thank you, because this isn't okay. Now they're gonna come in
Well,
with more subtle tactics, and I already see it happening. Like, I can spot this shit a mile away, and I'm seeing how they're
yeah.
coming in with like, I'm watching it, and I'm just kind of like, oh well, discernment grows, and also, I'm limiting my time in Telegram as much as possible. But yeah.
I
What were
don't
you gonna
blame you.
say?
I don't blame you at all. No, I just yeah, I found it to be such a toxic environment. I then there's Misfits, which is just all love, and then there's that other one, and I was like, oh, I even told you, I don't know how you do it. My heart rate is up, like my heart rate, like my blood pressure went up, even though I see what's happening, I know what's going on, but your brain interprets the narrative, whether you know what's true about it or not, you still have a physiological response. And it helped me to understand why you were blown up in your body with inflammation and anxiety and stuff. And it I thought, oh, how did she do it for so long? Like, I couldn't believe. And whenever I talked to you about it, it was always about, we're going to do this and we're doing this and we're engaging in this and we're learning about that. And it was always about the action. It was about the action points. It wasn't about, oh, I love Tori, I love Tori, I love Tori. You did love Tori and you did appreciate Tori. But I always got the feeling that you were there because you were really willing to do the work, whatever it took. If there was an opportunity to make some change, you were dedicated to doing it, as were
Yeah.
so many of these other sweet, sweet people.
That's the only reason we were there. We all care about our country. And
Yeah.
we got used to like, okay, fine, call me an op. I'm gonna keep forging ahead. I'm gonna keep working. And then having all these admins and people come at you and thwart your efforts when you get over target on something and you're doing something really well, like our sheriff's doc, like sending all this evidence to the sheriffs, getting accused of being sovereign citizens for doing that on the side. And like and it's just like, what are you talking about? Because I was like Googling sheriffs all over the nation. It's like, this sheriff changed their voting in their county because they investigated things that people brought to their attention. And because of that, they're all paper ballots. And I was like, sheriffs do hold the power. We didn't threaten them, but we were like, hey, we've reached out to all our representatives. No one's doing anything. Can you please investigate this? I feel like it's criminal that they're taking away my right to free speech. And we had a couple sheriffs that actually were really into investigating it. I wish I didn't send him Tori's
Yeah.
affidavit. My grand jury actually was the only one in the state that investigated the election evidence that I sent. And it came, but they were so excited when they called me. I wasn't allowed to talk about it till it was over. And they're all like asking me a bunch of questions, probably because I live in a red area. They're probably really decent people. They got so excited. And then they probably went through Troy's affidavit and couldn't make sense of any of it. But it came back inconclusive. And they says, if you have anything else, like, please continue to share it with us, you know? And I think that it was all about the action, but the problem is it was almost impossible to get anything done there because you're constantly being thwarted. And, you know, it's okay, but it is what it is. And I got to the point where I just watched people with passion, because there was moments where, you know, a friend of mine like had everyone doing something really good, and then that got shit on. And then people get to the point where they just give up, and they don't want to share their ideas. They go work in quiet places, which is fine, but it's a real missed opportunity for what we were supposed to be here for. It's like, you're supposed to be here for this, but we're going to make it as hard for you as possible to do it. And now, instead of focusing on your country or building relationships in a community of like-minded people, you're focusing on conflict constantly, to where it's
Right.
like, you know what I mean? It's
And then you were
crazy.
put on the defensive all the time. You were constantly having to defend yourself and your motives and weird shit like that. Like it all you wanted to do was show up and say, where do I work? Where's the workroom? What do I do? What's the task? How can we, it was an incredibly missed opportunity, but the truth is it wasn't an opportunity that was created for change. It was a net. It was a huge net meant to capture a bunch of waking up patriots. And it
Yep,
worked,
it worked.
but it's not going to work forever.
No,
It's actually falling apart as we speak. And I'm
it
not
is
just
on every
talking about
level.
on every level,
Yeah.
every level.
I
Yeah,
want to
it's
talk about that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else from that situation. No, I think we kind of covered all that. Yeah, let's talk about
I
that. I want
love
to,
Donna too. Oh my gosh.
aren't these ladies great? And I know you said
Oh,
earlier that Misfits is all love, and I'm just going to stress it. Please come to Brad's chat. It is better now. We have fixed it. It's the cool thing about it is, um, yeah, we got lurkers watching. Let them watch. The point is, like, that is a place that people can easily come to, you know, and like work out all the stuff and have conversations. And Brad's entire intention was like, I want to move forward. And so
yeah.
I hope that
I
that
love that.
continues. I hope it continues to happen in that space. It's very special. Misfits is becoming a family. um love Donna so
I
much,
love her.
but
She is like, every time I see her little smiling face and grandma, I love her. I love them all. Sparky. I mean, these people are inspiring to me
yeah,
and they're beautiful. And I
the
see why you love
stories
them.
that are happening and the laughter, it's like, this is all we're trying to do, people. And this is what Brad's chat is going to be, because and anyone that is so pissed that we're laughing over shared experiences is just one, revealing themselves. Two, they're scared of something, and they probably should be scared of something. And you should go worry about cleaning up your own house and not putting out fires because of your own actions. Two, just get a life or join
The
the
thing is,
party.
truth,
Join the
truth can
party.
always handle scrutiny.
Yes.
If what you believe is true, if what you've invested in is true, it should be able to handle scrutiny. It should always be able to stand up to pressure. And when you start scrambling to prevent even questions from being asked, then you probably don't really believe what you're selling. And if you do believe what you're selling and you still feel like it can't be questioned, you're in a cult. So get out. Get out. It's not worth it.
100%. Well, and you know, you brought up something earlier that sounds so simple, but you said it should have originally been a place to share new ideas. And I love that so much. I think that one thing that people have lost is bringing forth their ideas to the table. It's all Tori's ideas, and they change constantly. It's like whatever her direction is, it's shifting all the time. And so you're
And
just
then you never
waiting.
even hear the culmination of some
Right.
of those ideas.
And
Where
she
did that
says,
go?
And
What happened?
she says things like, "Oh, you don't want to be in a room full of khakis. You want the person that's like this and like that." And she says the truth in those stories, but then she prevents it from happening. And it's just like, can you imagine if like everyone was able to share what they thought was a take on something and just try it out in your state without the scrutiny? Like we would actually have a well-rounded, balanced place. But like you can't have that with just one person and their ideas and everyone's following the leader. So you're right. I mean, obviously it's a cult, but yeah. I imagine sometimes where we would be if influencers weren't real and we all woke up spontaneously in 2020 and just had our shared experience, because I know when I first found people, we were doing a lot more, like, and it was organic and it was real, and I was getting ideas from other people. I would see someone do something on Instagram and I'd be like, I could do that too. I'll help over here in my state. And like there was a sense of like joy and camaraderie and freedom, and no one's in my Instagram telling me it can and can't post and I have to run it by some woman. Like it was just organic. And like when we all left that organic thing for our little influencer world, that's when we got stuck. So what do you see is happening? Because I know I've talked about it a little here, but I do think 2023 is a massive shift, a second awakening. What are your thoughts?
It is impossible to put into words what I feel is happening right now. Um, First of all, your freedom and your liberation from this ideology, this ideological snare, is like the best news ever. It's like so beautiful. And I still have the picture of you sitting at a table in your little hippie skirt with your little tattoos and your hand wipes and your sanitizer and your recall Gavin Newsom by yourself at a table in front of a store doing everything you could do, that just something, right? The beauty of that. And I feel like that's just been restored. That organic thing you're talking about has been restored. But as the second awakening, as you called it, and I really adopted that because I'm like, yeah, because when we when we leave one matrix, when it blows up and we see it for what it is, like your dad and I leaving the religious system. We've been out like 17 years now. Um, it's really easy to jump into another one. Somebody was making fun of you for being in 4 cults. And I laughed at that because I thought everybody's been in a cult. Have you been to high school? Have you been to college? Have you worked at a corporation? Everybody's been in a cult. Do you work for doctors? It's something that we've all been programmed to be a part of. But the thing that's happening now transcends programming. It it is, and the thing is, the paradigm shift that's about to happen and is happening in people is kind of like a near death experience or an out of body experience, because you're literally being set free from really old systems that were created to keep you in slavery. And so what's happening now is the possibilities are absolutely limitless and endless.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited about it. I don't even know what to do. All I'm doing is getting as healthy as I can. I'm going deep, and I'm dealing with lifelong health issues that I've never really known. But part of this great awakening, part of this new awakening, this evolving awakening that's happening, is we're getting access to information we've never had before. And so I think people are going to we're going to see, I mean, this is kind of full circle in all reality, because, we celebrate our right as Americans to defend our country, to do right by our country, to love our country and our countrymen. And yet what's happening transcends even that. And so we've come to this full circle moment where we're no longer under the illusion that these systems can be fixed. Now, I know everybody's at different places on that spectrum of understanding, and I'm not placing myself above anybody in saying that I'm right or anything like that. All I can say is that intuitively, I now know that what's happening is so much bigger and better than just getting the right guy in office. The systems have reached critical mass. Every system has reached critical mass, and it's melting down. It really can't be fixed because the foundation that so many of these things that we have fought for or believed in are faulty. They've been built on false premises, always designed to keep you dumb and keep you enslaved and keep you a part of groupthink. And so now, as we dare to break free from the groupthink of the systems, look at the healthcare system. It's imploding. It's literally blowing up. Doctors are leaving by the droves. Patients don't want to go to the doctors anymore. People are reading. Look at Dirt Road Discussions with Danny on Telegram. He has so many people following him, and he simply shared his story of breaking free from allopathic medicine that was killing him. And he's now experienced a full return to health, and he's helping a bunch of other people do it. So where we are now with this awakening is we're returning to something that we've long since forgotten, the most important of which is who we actually are. And when you begin to understand that we are so much more than we've been told, and they have literally genetically messed with us, and we're seeing the fruit of that. So the healthcare system, it's killing people. I mean, healthcare system is hilarious. It's more of a disease management system, and that's what it is, and meant and intended to keep them being rich. We have a government now that is completely under the control of an entity that is not an American, it's not comprised of American people. Nobody voted the people who run this country in. Nobody voted them into office. And so that whole system is collapsing in front of our very eyes. And I personally don't think it can be fixed. I don't. I think something can happen to bring harmony and equilibrium to the planet, but it's not going to be achieved politically, and it certainly isn't going to be achieved with the political people that are in place right now. So the education system has produced the most arrogant. I mean, look at academia. It's an absolute embarrassment. I found out that I've always assumed that IQ, the term IQ, intelligent quotient, was a measure of a person's ability to think critically and problem solve. Well, I learned the real definition of it, and what it is the amount of information one can take in and spit out verbatim. That's not the same thing as critical thinking. I've known people that memorized half the Bible, and they were far from being a critical thinker. And so the education system is a farce and a joke. Just, trust the science, trust the experts and the science.
How about just listen to your president? It's just like, just do this thing. Yeah.
Like, which one should we listen to? Like,
no, but I'm
Joe Biden or that Joe Biden or
Donald Trump. I'm just saying, Tori says always, all you have to do is listen to your president. I'm like, okay, that's all I have to do in my life. That's okay, guys. Oh, I have the answer. I'm so glad I solved the problem. Just listen to my president. I don't even really listen to Trump anime, and I love him. But I'm like,
don't think for yourself. That's the message. Don't think for yourself. Don't deviate from the crowd. Don't color outside of the lines. stay doing this and doing this. Well, the cat's out of the bag. It's never going back. It's never going back. And
No.
it's so damn exciting. I mean, it
Yes.
went from fear. Once you break free from the influencers and the spell of fear is broken and you begin to understand that possibilities are limitless, it it's actually mind-blowing. And I didn't articulate this well, but that's kind of where I'm at. I'm seeing all of these systems completely crash to the ground. Men are proclaiming that they have periods and can have children. And everybody's getting counseled on TikTok and YouTube about what people's pronouns are. It's so
Did you see
fun.
the lion dress? And I'm like, what happened to animal rights? And like, there's one of the recent award shows, someone was in an all blood costume, and another one had a
Oh,
giant.
Doja Cat. Doja
Yeah, and one
Cat.
of them had
Yeah.
a giant lion head, and people are literally like, "This is the collapse of our civilization." It's like,
Well, it's kind of like the Hunger Games.
yes, it's
Um,
super Hunger Games, just like Biden's
it's very,
inauguration. It's like it gives you that vibe for sure. But yes, I'm with you. That's what I wanted to talk about. That's what excites me is like once I broke free from Tori, it was the best breaking free ever. But then zooming out further and seeing all the influencers were doing it, and they all like did the thing where they latched onto us and we're like, you're my guru now, and this is the only way I look at the world, and I ignore all the other voices of people in my life because they're not as smart as our cult. And once I got past all of that and I saw that all the influencers are doing it, and then I was like, I'm not going to fall for it again. And then I become a Christian for like a month. And I'm not trying to break people's hearts on this one. For my Christians, I have mad respect for you and love for you. But I broke free from Christianity like 2 decades ago, or a little less. I'd say about 16 years ago. And my life has been wonderful. I've been the most creative, free, happy person ever, even through hardships or whatever. Like removing Christianity was a really beautiful experience for me. And just being more aware of the presence of God in the last couple of years has really just been undeniable. To see God in everything and to watch this massive wake up and to see the way that people are connected together, like through this synchronicity, I'm just like, whoa, like, okay, God is super real. And then I find myself like communicating with God. And then just it's like right after I left Tori, for some reason, I guess it's that thing when you get away from one thing, you're kind of looking, how do I fill my space and my time? And I had a really busy work week and just put on the Gospels and really loved and resonated with some of the Jesus stories about, being anti-system, all the things that I like. And then I was like, oh my God, I think I'm a Christian because I love this story. And then I find Chuck. Chuck
dear
Swindoll,
Chuck.
not the father, but the son Chuck, and who I'm so excited is going to come on the show and interview once I'm done listening to his book, because I'm going to have some really good questions for him. But I find him at the really timely place, and I know people are probably thinking, oh, you found another person to follow. That's not what it is.
No,
Chuck
it's
was
not.
literally talking about things 2 years ago, and someone shared his video that it's all the things I've always believed and known. And he organized it in a way that I was like, oh yeah. And he talked about the Luciferians and all these cults, which I believe now that Tori's a Luciferian, because when I listened to that I know that sounds crazy to some.
No,
When I listened to Chuck break down what the Luciferians believe, I was remembering the time she was inserting that shit in her shows, like that Adam and Eve being that Cain and Abel were twins, and Cain was she taught this, Mom. Like she had this preacher
yeah.
share this with us, where Cain was the son of Satan, and therefore the lineage. She didn't go into the lineage and the bloodline, but that's what the Luciferians believed, that they are the lineage of Satan through Cain. And Tori was like, oh, this is what really happened in the Bible, essentially, is what she was saying. And I was like, oh shit. And then I'm remembering her share this other book with us about, and then like all of the devil stuff she brings up. And a lot of the stuff was coming together, and I'm like, oh, I think she's a Luciferian. Now it makes sense. And I was so grateful. And you wouldn't know that about Tori if you didn't listen to all of her shows for 3 years. So I was like, she was inserting this stuff in, and they love the Bible, Luciferians. And I'm like, it's starting to make
Oh,
sense.
they know it. They know it better than most
Oh,
Christians.
absolutely. Because I do believe it was written by this cult, I think. And what Chuck was saying made so much sense. And I was like, oh, okay. No wonder I've never resonated with the sacrifice, all the human sacrifice in the Bible. The fact that we are born inherent sinners, the fact that we are created incorrectly and we come into this, we're like, all of nature is perfect, but we're the one thing that's just wrong because it's somebody's like sinned years ago, so we were destined to fail from the beginning. So what we're doing constantly is viewing ourselves as a sinner. And I love how he brings up how even the Darwin the what is it, evolution theory, we start as pond scum. And he was like, they're both just presenting you this bullshit that you are meaningless, you are nothing. And I'm like thinking
Yeah.
about it, and then um we're rejecting a part of ourselves our whole lives, thinking I'm bad for this. Oh, if I have darkness in me, I'm bad. Like my friend recently was like looking at me like there was something wrong with me because I was walking through the darkness. And for her, it was like, when you figure that out, I'll be here. And I'm just kind of like, no, I'm learning right now to integrate that there isn't a part of me that's bad, that I'm a whole creature, and that comes with all kinds of stuff. But I don't know, when I started watching his stuff about, what is it, hallucinating Christianity? Is that
Oh,
what it's
that's
called?
so good.
I'm
Yeah.
about a quarter way through, and I am like, oh, thank you for bringing this in, because I'd never heard anyone talk about the Christianity and the Bible in the Luciferian stuff. And I'm sorry to anyone that I'm offending. I have to be honest.
No, it's quite powerful. And the thing about it that's powerful is um it's it's a it's hard to describe to people, especially who have been in the religious system, because we were there. We know what it's like to
Yeah.
be in that. And we're kind of in a place right now, like you were making fun of yourself for becoming a Christian for like a couple of weeks, but the truth is that there is no such thing. That's that saying that says there's no such thing as an atheist um in a
Foxhole.
foxhole. It's true. Like hard times, dark nights of the soul push you into places that will challenge where you find your security, where you find you. Everybody wants to be safe, everybody wants to be loved, and we've been programmed for safety over living. We live in a place of of wanting to be comfortable, even like, well, Chuck even talked about this. He talked about being, bored. We would rather be safe and bored and languish than live a dynamic, ever emergent kind of life. And I've felt for a long time. I mean, he's saying some things I've never heard before in context, in a bigger context for sure. But I think with you too, it's just that he's resonating with things that you're like, wait a minute, I saw that. That's true. And one of the things that your dad and I and you have talked about many times in the past is the idea that um, one of the things with that troubled me the most about being a Christian and being in, and we've been in a few churches. There's common themes in all of them, and one of them that really troubled me the most was this indictment against our heart. It's wicked, it's deceptive, it's evil. And if you pair this is the inerrant word of God, and you're programmed to believe that this is the inerrant word of God, and then you're told that your heart is wicked and deceitful, but then you're told, but you need to hear that still small voice. Well, where the hell do you hear that? In your heart. But your heart has been impugned because it's wicked, evil, and deceitful. So the place where you would go to hear the still small voice, you can't hear it because you can't trust yourself and you can't trust your heart. And you certainly can't trust God because it pleased him to sacrifice his son. And not to mention the whole shenanigans with Abraham and Isaac. Let's drag Isaac up to the place of sacrifice and just get ready to take his life. And the theme of sacrifice is throughout the entire scripture. And the truth is, we're always the one that are wrong. If stuff goes bad, it's our fault. If stuff goes good, it's God's fault. But yet we're created in his image. How does that work? Like, how does it work that I'm created in his image? So, and the whole thing with Christianity that I could never fully sign on to was the actual sin part of it, that we were born a sinner, and that becomes our identity, and we can never escape from it. We are born a sinner, we die a sinner, we're always a sinner. And so it's a treadmill sort of religion, which in all reality, I always thought, well, doesn't that just basically kind of take the balls out of what actually happened on the cross? Like this thing said it was finished. Well, how is it finished?
If you're
How is
still
it
a
finished?
sinner, if you're
If I'm
still
still a
dependent, if
sinner.
you still, it's finished, but you still have to go through this procedure to find, and oh man, I'm so sorry to the people who are hearing this, but I've noticed that there is, oh, I don't want to look at Christians. I'm just saying, I'm seeing the fruit of the tree is not good in my most devout, some of my most devout friends, as far as the limitations that they feel in their own lives. I don't see freedom and abundance for themselves and others. I see almost more restrictive of, well, this is the way, and I can't go into details, but I've seen it on many fronts, and I've been that. And I noticed it started to creep in initially when I became a Christian. It's just so funny. It was like 2 days ago when I did that, and I noticed that I started to have to fit things that didn't make sense in, because then I'm like, wait, now do I have to believe in hell? Wait, because I've never believed in hell. It doesn't make sense to me. And I said it when I walked away, it was 17 or 18. I said, if a God wants to send people to hell for making mistakes or not learning the specific weird formula, then that's no God I'll serve. Almost like, if that's who you are, cool, send me to hell, because I think that's fucked up. So I've never believed in hell. I don't think I haven't. I have these issues where all of a sudden I'm like, does this mean I have to, like that? What was the verse about? If you'll be ashamed in front of people of me, then I'll be ashamed of you. And I'm like, does that make me feel like I need to go talk about Jesus all the time? Like, now I'm feeling shame. I'm
Which
feeling
is so unnatural.
fear. It's so unnatural. I'm feeling obligation. I'm feeling all of these things like, hey guys, did you know you're going to go to hell if you don't do this thing, which I would never do. But I'm just kind of like, ooh, now I just felt the things piling on me the second I looked into this religion again and revisited it. I was like, all of a sudden I'm getting more like heavy, and that shouldn't be the fruit of anything good. And now that I look at the Bible, it's like this little tiny thing of Jesus's life was just so beautiful in the middle, but then it ends in death and the celebration of death. And then and all of the Old Testament is nothing but disgusting rules and violence and showing God as this, like, I'm jealous, I need you to praise me at all costs. And I'm like, that's like how our politicians are. That's how Tory, hi dad. That's how a Tory acts. It's literally like, say my name, say mine. It's that same spirit. And I'm like, this shit was written by Luciferians. And then I watch right after Jesus dies, and they're all, you did that. You did that. So we're already like, now we're all guilty of that too, somehow. Well, then they start to build the churches. The first thing they do is, okay, now that we have Jesus, let's turn it into organized structures so you can all be controlled for the rest of time. And I was like, oh, and everyone needs to listen. If you're a Christian, I challenge you to listen to Chuck's stuff and decide if you're a Christian after it all. Listen to his father was one of the most influential pastors in America, still is to this day. He's right up there with
in the world,
in
in
the
the
world.
entire world.
He's right
like
up there with
16 languages. His radio program is broken down into 16 languages. different countries.
He's like the
And like you
Tory of
said,
the church, only
yeah,
even bigger.
except he's precious. I mean, these
Yeah.
people are precious. They're Christians are, I'm fond of them. I I don't agree with them, but I'm fond of them. But it doesn't take much to get them screaming, angry, flustered, and freaked out. Just like we said about Tory, anything that you believe that can't stand questions and scrutiny, and if you can get turned upside down in a sniveling ball of fear and anger, then and hatred, then you need to re-examine because you're only mirroring the God you believe in. And so I I've met Christians that are connected to the divine source of love. And there's no doubt in my mind that they are lovers of people. They don't walk in shame. They're an odd breed because just like this was a vulnerable group for all of these political influencers, um, the church is full of people that are overwhelmed with shame. I mean, I've been in church for 9 years. One particular church, the last one we were really a part of, and we were there for almost 9 years. And all 9 years, the same people were always coming up and throwing themselves on the mercy of God every Sunday. And I'm not mocking that, but their identity is clearly formed around the fact that they're never enough, they're never going to be enough. And that's one of the pet sayings in the whole thing. And I'm not even against people being religious. If that's your thing, do it with the fullness of everything that you have. And if it produces good fruit and life, please, by all means. But being involved in church for 25 years, I know enough to know that it's full of people being exploited because of their shame. And, Brene Brown wrote a really good book, and I think it was the Gifts of Imperfection. I think that was the one. But basically, in it, she talks about shame, and she talks about how shame is the belief that I'm intrinsically wrong. I am wrong. Whereas guilt is healthy and says, I did wrong.
Yeah.
And then you change your mind and you make it right and you sort it out. But shame is something that gets exploited terribly in religious situations where people are giving. I mean, I've seen people quit their jobs and work full time for no money at the church when they had kids and a wife
Yeah.
that they needed to take care of. They needed to pay bills and take care of stuff. But it's just this mentality that divorces itself from reason and divorce. And the other problem with it is the overarching draw of religion is love, right? For all of us, why do we go? Because we believe God is love and we believe that love heals everything. And so people don't just go running into church because everything's great in their life. They don't.
Right. Well, it's just
They
like
go
2020, like we were talking about the other day. Like we were all susceptible to find all these leaders because
right.
we were in a vulnerable spot as far as a lot of us weren't even political before 2020. So we're like, okay, where's the political people to teach me what the hell's going on here? And
Right.
very similar with church, as you and I were discussing on the phone the other day, or it was Dad and I. Most of us come to God when we're struggling with something, and it's totally understandable that like I come away from this person. I believe in God. That's not changing. I'm just saying that I'm realizing that one thing I like that Chuck brings up, and I'm just using him as an example because I haven't heard anyone speak with this much clarity in a long time regarding this. And I think that one of the things he mentions is putting God in these small boxes. And that's what religion does. It holds God in a container, and it really brings it down. Like, and he's like, when you expand to understand God is so much bigger than these structures that were handed to us 2000 years ago or whenever.
It's absolute arrogance. It's arrogance of the highest order because, and I know this sounds like an old trope because I've said it so many times, but just in the United States alone, there are like 33,000 different Christian sects. So each sect has its own doctrine. It has its own rules, and every person in every church absolutely believes that theirs is the one that's right, that
Yes.
theirs is the one that's true. And so, as I was saying earlier about the thing about love, we served side by side with these people for 9 years. We did Sunday school. We taught we led children's worship. After leading worship, after your dad led worship, I was on the worship team upstairs. We would go down. We would lead the kids in worship and all these beautiful things. And we
Wednesday
ate
night.
together Wednesday night, Sunday night, every time the doors were open, and yet when we left, having had no problem with anyone other than the leadership, which we spoke to them about face to face, all the other people lockstep just acted like we no longer existed. This was our only family. We even neglected your dad's parents had things that needed to be done. My mom had things that she could have had help with, but we were there all of the time. And so instead of transforming our community, we became this inbred cult of people that were not allowed to ask questions. The leadership was not strong enough to withstand scrutiny. And then and I was part of this, like you were part of the admin thing for a time, not proud of it, but I was part of the whole gossipy elders and their wives crowd. Like we were in like Flynn. We were the 20% that did the work. We were there dedicated all the time. And because we wanted to belong and be on the inside and have insider information, we took part in conversations that were just messed up and wrong. And so when we ended up leaving, we knew when we left that we would lose every relationship. And I've gotten my relationship back with my brother and his wife, which has been an answer to prayer. I've wanted to reclaim that because I love them so much and I love their precious kids. But I'd been in the deal long enough to know that when you start talking differently or you start asking questions that aren't allowed, that you'll pay the price. And so the love is incredibly conditional.
Yeah.
And
can you imagine the message is it's the double speak that we get from people like Tori. That's the hard thing. It's like on one hand, it's all done and it's beautiful and you're so loved, but on the other hand, you said the conditional part, and that was the hard thing for me. That's why I felt so free in the last 15 plus years is I didn't have conditions on my life. I was just able to exist and I didn't feel apart from God at all.
And
I
you didn't
felt,
go out and murder and rape a bunch of people?
yeah, and I managed to still be a good person without a sense of guilt because that's who I am. And
that's who you are. That's right.
that's who most of us are. I believe this idea that most of us are inherently bad, I think is a horrible way to see the world. I don't think it's the truth.
I don't either.
I think that people want to do good and want to show love and want to be loved and yeah, this idea that, and another thing that I've been noticing lately in this experience is when you see yourself as a sinner and you believe a part of you is bad and you're not like a whole creature. So now I'm starting to see myself, I'm whole. I'm lacking nothing. I have everything I need. I don't need something from an outsider. God's not out there. God's here. God's with me in all things. I don't need to go find it. When you realize that, there's like, okay, well, what about my anger? What about the fact that I get pissed off and all of this stuff? And I've noticed that people are really quick to reject those sides of themselves and almost like, well, I don't want to be too sad or I don't want to be too angry. And I know that this comes with the best of intentions because we don't want to cause harm in the world. It just shows what good people we are. But I think that it's not healthy to to put those things down. And the reason I did my last episode, and the reason that I'm so vocal about how wrong I believe what happened to us is because I think anger needs to be acknowledged. And then once you acknowledge it and you walk through it, you come out of the other side really quickly. And I think when you don't acknowledge anger, or you see it as just a bad part of me that I'm going to shove down, you become bitter. You hold on to that shit forever. You blame yourself forever. You become covered in shame because you can't get those feelings to go away. No, it's a normal reaction to be pissed off when someone fucks with your head. Like, it's a normal reaction when someone you trusted turns on you on a dime and doesn't explain why. It's like, it's okay to be angry, and it's actually really important because it's acknowledging yourself. But then it allows you to move forward. So that's just something I noticed that I wanted to share with people, because, a lot of us, because we're such good people, and it doesn't matter Christian or not, we do this thing where we're like, oh, that's the bad side of me. Is it?
Non-Christians love their kids. I mean,
Yeah.
surprise, surprise. They love them. They nurture them. They provide for them. They support them. They speak hard truths to them. They're honest with them. I mean, but the thing about the shadow self, or whatever you want to call it, my shadow self has gotten me out of some pretty tight spots. Whereas my Mr. Nice Guy self put up with a lot of abuse.
Yep.
But the anger and the defense of self, which some people would say, like when we left church and we began to point out the obvious things to other friends, like we moved here and all of our Christian friends from 25 years ago couldn't handle the fact that we weren't in church. It was so bizarre. It's so limiting. But they would always say, you're bitter. You're stuck in bitter. And I'm like, let's not conflate calling a spade with bitterness, because a fact is a fact. A hurricane is destructive. Are you just going to say that everyone who says the hurricane is destructive is just bitter? Or are they just telling the truth about the destructiveness of the hurricane? Do we all hate hurricanes? Not necessarily. It's probably a bad analogy, but just this idea, like you said, that I remember telling your dad, I'm like, I just get this feeling that, the shadow self of who we are really needs to be thanked and acknowledged.
Hell yeah.
And it's helped me leave toxic friendships.
Well, why do you think that they want us to be apologetic and ignore that? Because when we integrate our shadow selves, we're powerful, and we don't put up with bullshit. Like I was telling someone today, because we find ourselves apologizing for setting boundaries. I was telling someone today that asked me a question, and I was just like, about a friendship, and that changed. And me, my whole life, as you know, has had an endless open door. Like, I don't care how you can shit on me a million different kinds of ways. If you come back, I was almost like, thank you. Of course, you're welcome here. And that was me. Not what was happening is I was living in mistrust, and I was allowing constant abuse. I'm at a time in my life, I've noticed, where I say things out loud that I was even nervous to say, and I own them, where I call things a spade, and I make everyone uncomfortable, not to make everyone comfortable, because someone needs to fucking say it. And I'm also at a point where if you show me that you're untrustworthy and I love you, I don't really have the desire to let you back in, because it's like, I don't need to learn it 10 more times. You showed me you're capable of something that I would never do to someone. And I decided that this is my level of what I expect in a friendship. And there's a couple key things you got to check the box: honesty, trust, don't betray me. Simple shit like that. And if you do it once, I've decided that I'm not going to sit around with you in a relationship knowing in the back of my mind it's going to happen again, because the second time it does, it's on me. So I think that the shadow self coming out and coming alive is what we need to happen. And I think it's mirrored in nature, because one thing I've been thinking is nature. I've been losing my fear of the political shit, because I do believe that things correct themselves over time. Even Tori talks about this with the Mandelbrot. No matter what, it is going to come around because we see this in all things. So once you hang on to that, you start to maybe embody a little bit of that fierceness, that unapologetic. Well, guess what? You actually become nature correcting course. And it comes
That's
through
cool.
me becoming a whole human being, being done with the bullshit. And guess what? I'm embodying nature now in the human sphere of like
Yeah,
the more people wake up to this garbage, the more people that are like, we're not going to watch you. We're not going to watch any of you anymore. You're totally useless. The only reason they have microphones is because there's an audience. The second we don't give a shit, possibilities are endless, but we have to do all the work on our own to break
that's
free.
it.
Yep.
That's it.
And it's
That's
not going to come in a peaceful, loving, oh, everybody's just going to be fine kind of way. No, we have to integrate our whole selves. Nature's violent. I'm not saying violence, but I'm saying getting fed up. Sorry, I'm on a tangent. I see so many good people who have been through so much abuse apologizing for the abuse. And it's like, I'm like, let's acknowledge what was done here. Let's acknowledge
right.
programs since birth. We've been trained to be groomed, to be lied to by every possible system we've ever encountered. Religious,
Yeah.
medical, like you said, or all of it. And now that it happens again with someone that we trusted on a deeply personal level, and we're just going to be like, oh, well, it was my fault. It was really fucked up what just happened.
Yeah.
It's okay
Well,
to say it out loud.
somebody wrote a book years ago when we were in church, and the name of the book was No More Mr. Nice Guy. And your dad and I, like, we resonated with it so much because um sadly in the church we've witnessed men basically become so completely emasculated that it's disgusting. And oh, they're just such nice guy. And I'm not mocking nice guy, but who do you want having your back when bad guys are breaking in your house? Do you want the nice guy, or do you want somebody with some balls and some courage and some ferocity? And I can't stand niceness for niceness sake. It's gross. It is absolutely cowardly and gross. And we need something
That's
different.
that
And
reminds me of something Brad said the other day because we were on the phone and I was just kind of like, yeah, you and I can get a little, but I don't know if everyone's ready for it. He goes, Ashley, there needs to be an asshole.
yeah.
And I'm
And,
like,
and
you're right. Someone does need to be the asshole for the right reasons. Like when everyone anyway.
absolutely, absolutely. There has to be a willingness. And here, truth can be found everywhere. And because I spoke Christianese for so long, and because some of that got through to me, and I remembered it, or I recognized it as being in alignment with truth. So there's lots of things like that. And there's lots of examples that I knew things from reading certain Bible verses and certain things that I was like, yes, but it was complete. I took it completely different than the way it was intended. Like the kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violent take it by force. That's always been positive to me. I always looked at that and I thought, yes, that's right. The kingdom of heaven is within. And so, it suffers violence, and it does. The kingdom within suffers violence, but the violent take it by force. I twisted that in my mind, and I always saw myself as violently taking my kingdom. This is my kingdom. I'm going to take it. And there's something about that that is so freeing. And when you get free, like when my dad passed away a couple of months ago, it just opened a portal for me. I don't know what it was, but something got opened up. And at the same time, I was doing that fast. I was fasting. And it was really for my health that I was fasting. And there's something really powerful about about fasting. Anyway, during that time, um, some stuff became so clear to me. And that's part of this awakening that's happening. But something opened up, and I had friends that I loved and still love, but suddenly I could see with clarity they're shitty. Like they have conversations about whether or not I would be welcome in a end of the world situation where people were dodging bullets and looking for food, and would I be welcome? And I thought, people who love you don't say things like that. People who
Nope.
love you don't debate whether or not you'd be welcome in a situation. And I love them still to this day. And there's so many things I absolutely, and as God is my witness, I admire. And I'm not even mad. That's how I know that I'm on the right track,
Yeah.
because I'm not even mad at them. I was more mad at myself that I stuck around for people who treated me like shit in some very real ways. And I had red flags for years, literally. And finally was just like, no, I think I'm good. And I was just telling your dad last night, I said, I'm so glad I don't have any friends. And I said, the reason why is because there's no way I could be able to find words to describe what's going on inside my mind right now. Like there are no words for it. Um, it's the most exciting thing I've ever been through, but there's no way to describe it.
That's
And
how I feel.
I know you're going through the same thing. And
No, it's so
many,
crazy. Once I opened up when I had my mind crack open the other, like Chuck like broke me through the bubble. I was almost there and I got caught in this like firmament space. And then all of a sudden it was like, nope, rocket ship out of here. And once I
oh
realized
yeah,
like all of the structures, okay, this whole place is a program. But then it wasn't even about that. It was about you don't need anything. And then looking around and seeing possibilities are endless. That's where the power really started to happen, because I was all of a sudden like, well, then
be
what am I
afraid of.
going to, if none of this has any power over me
Yeah.
and I accept that I'm going to die anyway, and people have been through worse, and okay, so what is my job here? It's like, you don't have a job here. Just experience, express, be. And I was like, oh, okay, so what do I want to do? And I found myself like all of a sudden, like starting from the inside out, like all I could do was start in my home. And then it moved to my outside of my home. And now I'm looking at the hills like, man, I want to get to that hill and start working in this thing over here. And all of a sudden I'm like changing my environment because I'm freed up, and I'm realizing how much I've been neglecting, because what's happened in the last 3 years is I was living in my mind.
Yeah.
I was creating these like fantastical realities of like Donald Trump and Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi and they're like battling in my brain along with Tory and Ali Akbar and all these fucking people I don't care about. And then that's going on. And then I'm arguing with these types, these birds and fish and whatever on on Telegram. And like that's going on in my brain. These epic battles are constant and they're in conflict with each other, and I'm trying to make sense
Yeah.
of it all. And it's like my mind became my reality, because I believe it does. And I felt like once I listened to a couple of those things, it was like I was like it all got swept completely clean.
Yeah.
And now
Yeah.
I'm like, the only way I can describe is I feel like I'm standing in an open field. Like I just got off a moving
Yeah.
ship. And once I stood on solid ground and caught my breath and realized I don't have anything to look at, it gets to be whatever I decide it is. I was sick. I was dizzy. I slept for 12 hours 2 days ago. I literally felt discombobulated, motion sickness, like, whoa, what do I do now? And now it's become like the world is all open to me again. So that's my best way of describing it. And I'm so excited. Like
You're
now
back in your body.
I'm back in my body, and I'm looking at things with a joy and a gratitude, and just like, I'm so lucky to be here right now.
I know. I feel the same way. And I feel like I feel like the flaming sword has been laid to the root of fear, and it's
Yeah.
been cut off. And it's like you said, what do I do now? What do I want to do? You said, what do I want to do?
Yeah.
And then I was looking at those paintings that the girls were posting in Misfits, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I was I was moved to tears because they're like, oh, and I'm doing the garden and chickens and living and doing this and doing that. And I was like, oh my goodness, and the cool thing is I always had it, and it's easy to, it sounds like I think I know everything. I don't, but hindsight is 2020.
Yeah.
And but I always had this feeling that these doctrines, whatever your chosen one is, it was so obnoxious to believe that we could contain the maker of all things within our understanding, which is an ever evolving, unfolding thing. But if you get to where you're afraid and you need the safety of those fences, and you're not able to kick the fences out and expand the field, you will keep God as small as your imagination. And I always had this feeling that God was so much bigger. And one of the things I really struggled with over the years was this idea that I felt like religion squeezes the supernatural out of God. It squeezes the possibility of limitless expansion out of things, because I know how limited this is. And I'm so glad that God is so much bigger, that source is so much bigger than what I have contrived or signed up for that made me feel the most safe and comfortable. But in reality, it was like beating my head against a wall till I was bleeding from my ears, because I was so bored and so exhausted with all of it, with the political maneuvering, the confusion, the double speak, the lack of transparency. All of it is the same thing, different matrix. It's
It's
all the
just
same.
like Tori's world. It's just a land of complete confusion and the contradictions. Like
Right.
the fact that it's been 2000 years since we've had this book and there's still people debating what the hell the contradictions mean. It's like it's just no, I love it.
I love it too. I'm really excited. I'm excited for you and
It feels
Nico.
so good. It feels
Excited
like
for
I'm
us.
exploring again. I'm thinking about the way I used to live. I'm thinking about the ship, you know what I mean? And when I got this, it was all about venturing out into the unknown and not being afraid. And it's like I gave 3 years to stagnation and fear. Even if I
Well,
at the time I didn't recognize it as fear.
right.
But I literally was like, we're all gonna die if we don't get the political world around us fixed.
And listen,
And
if that's what it took to break the
yeah,
spell, then it was worth every
absolutely.
single bit.
Oh,
One
you
of the
had
things
to
that
go. I
Dad and
had
I
to
was
go through it. I went through the dark night of the soul for 3. And not only that, I learned the landscape and how really corrupt it is. Like on the photo, on the image of this podcast is the labyrinth. And that's how I see the world of that, the whole world, to be honest, like that they try to hand us. It's confusing and you have to follow this person who's deceptive. And it's totally like the journey of the labyrinth. But I think that that's not how the world's meant to be seen. And lately I've had this thought when I think about it's all going to end, I look at the hills outside of my house and I feel like they're laughing back, almost just like, you're so silly. Like, really? Like, oh, are those your big problems? Because like we've been here this whole time and the earth has been here. And I even think about it with the climate change stuff, how like silly that they're like, the earth is ending and the earth's just like laughing at us. And then I thought, I don't know, did you see the doomsday clock?
no.
I have to tell you this real quick. I told Dad about it yesterday. So there's this doomsday clock. It's like these, I don't know, there's like these mathematicians. I don't know what they are, but they have this famous doomsday clock that says how close we are to total destruction of the world. And these are like people who are actually in a field and they have a whole thing. Anyway, it popped up on my Instagram and I looked it up. And it was like the doomsday clock is, and there's these people standing by this clock with a sheet on it. And they're like, the doomsday clock has been closer to the total destruction than we've ever seen before. It was at 1 minute, and I don't know what that means. And then they're like, now it's at 90 seconds, and they unveil this stupid clock, and I literally was like, you guys, this is so silly. This is what they were are resorting to constantly to make us peasant humans just believe we're going to die at any moment. And it's making us live and waste so many years of our life in the saddest reality. And then I'm thinking about all the people who never gave in like I did for 3 years, and they just enjoyed their lives, and how I'm mocking them this whole time. Like, oh, look at you're just enjoying your lives. Don't you know we're all going to die? And I'm like, oh, shit. I was the one gave over to fear. And I'm not saying others didn't. I think people who panicked and got the vaccine and wore the mask, they were also giving over to fear. I'm just saying that I was no better.
This is a wild ride, and the honor of being here uh, at this time is incredible. But I also have come to realize, that there have been some pretty trippy things happen throughout history, and the evidence of being wiped out is everywhere.
Yeah.
There's been a couple of wipeouts of things, but I'm like, man, there's no better way to go than on the ass of a comet. I don't
Oh
care
yeah, I'm down.
how it goes anymore. And the fear of it, you know, has been really broken. And I told your dad, I said, it's not so much that I'm gonna die that bothers me at all. It's how I'm gonna die. I hope it's quick and fast.
Me
But
too.
whatever it is, I have everything I need to do it. I have
Yeah.
everything I need to face whatever eventuality happens. And I kept saying, like for the last couple of years, I kept saying, we stopped taking risks. Why did we stop taking risks? Why did we stop doing scary things? Why did we stop like really pushing forward in life and not being hung up on that job or that dollar? I know common sense should prevail with our life decision. We shouldn't be stupid, but I think we can take way more risk than we realize. And I'm really excited about doing that. I'm
Me
really
too.
excited about kicking out the fences, knocking down the boundaries, literally experiencing the joy of being a human, having this experience here, and to be the calm face when everybody's panicking,
Yeah.
to
If
be
you're
able to,
well,
you know,
I was telling Dad yesterday, if your joy is dependent on an event happening in the future, then good luck. It's like freeing yourself from outcomes is really hard. But if it's like that's the thing I've noticed, the pattern of all of these things, it's a perpetual state of stuckness. All the things we discussed in this entire episode. And we know it as transparent as possible is the Tory community. It's always the carrot right in front of your face, and you're chasing this perpetual carrot. Don't you worry, guys. Things are going on in the background. It's tomorrow. But then I was laughing with Dad yesterday. We're like, in 5 minutes from now, it's like next week is
exactly.
always the week. It's gonna all work out. But that week never happens. And we're like, wait, these things are coming and going, and we're just waiting and waiting and waiting. And I know that it's abuse tactics, and it's basically to keep people in suspended animation, because
It
when we
is.
live in the actual present, that's when powerful things happen. And that's what I'm
That is
learning to do. That's why I
exactly.
felt so dizzy, because I was living in an imaginary place. And I'm like, I even told Dad, I was like, I think my eyes are probably adjusting away from my phone to looking off far distances. That's actually
And
having an effect on me, because
oh, that's beautiful. And it's funny too because you see the tricks now. Once the scales fall from your eyes, they never come back because um once you see the tricks, like the people that remember when people were like the Q people and other people, bless them, seriously bless their hearts because they're eternal optimists. But when they finally started saying, wait a minute, this and this, they were mocked and they were like, oh, he took the black pill,
he's
they were
not
they were
cozy. Wait,
yeah, yeah, exactly. And if I hear
Doomer.
popcorn, oh, I'm not eating popcorn, sorry. And then, and in church, if you're like persistently asking questions, well, you're like Thomas the doubter. There's always something to pin you to the wall to make it always your fault that you've somehow failed. And it always has to do with when you start using critical thinking and you start
Yes.
asking questions. The thing is, the litmus test is ask questions without a smile on your face and be persistent. You'll find out real quick where people are. You'll find
Mhm.
out if they have an agenda. You'll find out if they're trying to tell you what to think real quick. You'll
Oh, and
find
if
out.
you're persistent, like you said, and you keep asking for clarity, you'll watch them change their story. Yeah,
They'll
you'll
put
start
another
to,
breadcrumb out,
yeah,
and the next thing you
yeah,
know, you'll be
when,
inside the witch's house roasting on a spit in her fireplace because you followed all the crumbs. Because
yeah,
that's all it ever ends to. That's where that leads, because it's not your path. Your path is to live your life as if God really does love you, no matter what. And that's kind of what I've just recently discovered. And it's mind blowing. It's incredibly freeing. And I feel like I'm 10 feet tall, like Alice.
out of Wonderland. Oh my goodness, this has been so much fun.
So much fun. I love
Thank
it.
you
It's
for
been,
doing this.
oh, you're so welcome. I hate being on camera. It's just never been something I've loved, but I don't even care anymore. It's just such a privilege and an honor to be here now, and I would not trade places with anybody on the planet. I
That's how
just
I
wouldn't.
feel. Yeah,
I'm excited.
I'm
I
excited
love
too.
you. I
I
love
love
you so
you.
much.
Thank you for doing this, Mama.
Thank you for inviting me to be part of it.
Absolutely. Have
All
a good
right.
night.
You too,
Bye.
sweetheart. Bye.